Hi, fifth graders. Hope you're doing fine. Welcome to the fourth quarter. It's the last one. I'm going to read you a story called Life in Flatland, written by A. Square. So let's begin. We live in a world of three dimensions: length, height, and width. What would it be like if the world had only two dimensions? The book Flatland was written nearly 100 years ago. The author, A. Square, his real name was Edwin Abbott, had a unique viewpoint. In his imaginary world, all the people are triangles, squares, circles, and other flat shapes. I call our world Flatland not because this is what we called it, but so that you will know what it is like. You must understand at once that in my country there is nothing of the kind you call a solid shape. As you know, a solid or three-dimensional shape has length, width, and thickness. But in Flatland, everything is flat. That is, there are only two dimensions, length and width. Imagine a huge sheet of paper on which straight lines, triangles, squares, pentagons, hexagons, and other shapes move freely about, very much like shadows. You will then have a pretty correct idea of what my country and countrymen look like. You might think that we can tell triangles, squares, and other flat shapes by sight, but this is not so. We cannot tell one shape from another. We can see only straight lines. Let me show you why this is so. Place a penny in the middle of a table. Now, lean over the table and look straight down upon the penny. It will appear to be a circle. But move back to the edge of the table and lower your head. When your eyes are exactly level with the edge of the table, so that you are, as it were, a flatlander, the penny will no longer look like a circle. It will seem to have become, so far as you can see, a straight line. The very same thing will happen if you take a piece of cardboard and cut out a triangle or square or any other shape. Put the shape on a table and look at it from the edge of the table. You will find that you see only a straight line. Well, that is exactly what we see in Flatland when we meet a friend. As our friend comes ever closer to us, the line becomes larger and brighter. When our friend goes away from us, the line becomes smaller and dimmer. Our friend may be a triangle, square, pentagon, hexagon, or any other shape. But all we see is a straight line. You may wonder how we can tell one friend from another. I will explain in a moment. But first, let me now tell you about the kinds of people there are in Flatland. Our soldiers are straight lines. I shall have more to say about them shortly. All of our farmers are isosceles triangles with two equal sides, each about 11 inches, 27 centimeters long. The third side is quite short, often not much more than half an inch, 12 millimeters. This causes the two equal sides to form a very sharp angle that is most useful for plowing. Our merchants and shopkeepers, of whom there are many, are equilateral or equal-sided triangles. Most of our fine doctors and lawyers are squares, like myself, but a few who have risen to the top of their profession are five-sided shapes or pentagons. They are several degrees of school teachers. beginning with six-sided shapes or hexagons, and going on to that have many more sides. Finally, we have our philosophers, who are the wisest of all our people. They have so many sides, and the sides are so small that they cannot be distinguished from a circle. There are many dangers in Flatland, just as there are in your world. The greatest of these dangers is our shapes. We have to be careful not to bump into one another. A flatlander who has a sharp shape can easily hurt another person. For this reason, our sharply pointed farmer triangle are quite dangerous. This being so, you can see that our soldiers are far more dangerous. If a farmer is like an arrowhead, a soldier is like a needle, inasmuch as a soldier is all point. For a line, as you know, is made up entirely of points. Add to this the power soldiers have of making themselves almost invisible, and you can easily see that a soldier of Flatland is not a person to trifle with. Perhaps you are wondering how our soldiers can make themselves invisible. Let me explain. Place a needle on a table. Then, with your eye at the edge of the table, look at the needle sideways. You will see the whole length of it. But look at it endways and you see nothing but a point. It has become practically invisible. This is how it is with all our soldiers. When a soldier's side is turned toward us, we see a straight line. When the end containing the soldier's eye faces us, we see nothing but a rather gleaming point. But when a soldier's back is to us, it is a dim point that is almost impossible to see. You can understand, then, how dangerous our soldiers are. You can get a gash by running into a merchant triangle, and you can be quite badly wounded in a collision with a farmer triangle. But it is nothing less than an absolute death to bump into a soldier. And when a soldier is seen only as a dim point, it is difficult, even for the most cautious, to avoid a collision. For this reason, our soldiers must be careful. When any soldiers are out in the street, either standing or walking about, they must move their backs constantly from side to side so that anyone behind them will be able to see them. You lucky people who live in a world of three dimensions are blessed with shade as well as light. You enjoy many colors. You can see an angle and the complete shape of a circle. But in Flatland, we do not have these blessings. How, then, can I make you understand the difficulty we have recognizing one another? The first means of recognition is the sense of hearing. Our hearing is keener and more highly developed than is yours. It enables us not only to tell the voices of our friends, but even to tell the difference between shapes, at least for the triangle, the square, and the pentagon. But feeling is the best way of recognizing another flatlander. What an introduction is to you. Feeling is with us. However, you must not think that feeling is as slow and difficult for us as it might be for you. Long practice and training, which begins in school and goes on throughout life, make it possible for us to quickly tell the difference between the angles of an equal-sided triangle, a square, or a pentagon. It is not necessary, as a rule, to do more than feel a single angle to tell a person's shape unless he or she belongs to the higher class of shapes. That makes it much more difficult. Even the professors in our University of Wentbridge have been known to confuse a 10-sided polygon with a 12-sided one. And there is hardly a doctor of science anywhere in Flatland who would know at once, just by feeling a single angle, the difference between a 20-sided and a 24-sided shape. Many of us prefer still a third method, which is recognition by the sense of sight. That this power exists anywhere, and for any class is the result of fog. For fog is present everywhere during most of the year, except in the very hot parts of Flatland. For you, fog is a bad thing that hides the landscape, makes you feel poorly, and damages your health. But fog for us for is a blessing, nearly as important as the air itself. If there were no fog, all our friends would look like exactly the same kind of straight line. But wherever there is a rich supply of fog, an object only slightly farther away that another is bit dimmer than the nearest object. So, by carefully examining the dimness and brightness of things, we are able to tell the exact shape of an object. For example, suppose I were to see two people coming toward me. Let us say that one is a merchant, an equilateral triangle, and the other is a doctor, a pentagon. Both appear to be straight lines, so how am I to tell one from the other? In the case of the merchant, I see a straight line, of course. The center of this line, which is the part nearest to me, is very bright. But on either side, the line fades away rapidly into the fog. I can tell at once, then, that the line slants back quite sharply from the center. On the other hand, the doctor has a slightly different appearance. As with the merchant, I see only a straight line with a very bright center. On either side, the doctor's line also fades into the fog, but not as rapidly as the merchant's lines. Thus, I can tell at once that the doctor's line does not slant back as sharply. Because of the slight difference in brightness, I know that one shape is an equilateral triangle and that the other is a pentagon. But enough about how we recognize one another. Let me now say a word or two about our climate and our houses. Just as you do, we have 4 points of the compass: north, south, east, and west. But because there is no sun, or indeed any other heavenly body, in Flatland it is impossible for us to tell north in the way you do. However, we have a method of our own. By a law of nature in Flatland, there is a constant pull from the south. This pull is quite enough to serve as a compass in most parts of Flatland. Moreover, the rain, which falls at regular times each day, comes always from the north. So this is an additional help. And in the towns, we have the help of the houses, for every house is built with the roof pointing north to keep off the rain. However, in our more northern regions, the pull of the south is hardly felt. Sometimes, when making across an open plain where there have been no houses to guide me, I have had to stand and wait for hours until the rain came. Only then could I be sure of the direction in which I was going. Our houses are quite comfortable and very well suited to our climate and way of life. The most common form of house construction in Flatland is five-sided or pentagon shaped. The two northern sides make up the roof and usually have no doors. On the east, there is the door by which we go in. On the west side, there is another door by which we go out. In this way, we are able to go in and out without bumping into and hurting one another. The south side, or floor, is usually doorless. Square and triangular houses are not allowed. There is a good reason for this. The angles of a square, and still more of a triangle, are much more pointed than the angles of a pentagon. The lines of houses and almost all other objects are dimmer than the lines of men and women. Therefore, there is a danger that the points of a square or triangular house sorry, might do serious injury to an absent-minded traveler suddenly running against them. As early as the 11th century of our era, triangular houses were forbidden by law. Sorry. The only exceptions were forts and similar kinds of buildings, where the sharp points might serve a useful purpose. At this period, square houses were still permitted. But about 3 centuries later, the law decided, for reasons of public safety, that in all towns with a population above 10,000, the angle of the pentagon was the smallest house angle that could be allowed. It is only now and then in some very remote and backward farming district that one may still discover a square house. We have no windows in our houses. This is because light comes to us both inside and outside, by day and by night, equally at all times and in all places. But where light comes from, we do not know. In the old days, our wise men liked to try to discover the cause of light, but this filled our hospitals with those who went mad trying to solve the problem. Alas, I alone in Flatland, know the true solution to this mysterious problem, but I cannot make my knowledge understandable to a single one of my countrymen. I am mocked at. I, the only one who knows the truth. That light comes from your strange world of 3 dimensions. And this is the story. I hope you like it. It's very different. So bye. See you.